Hello and welcome to this special interview introducing a new multimedia course with the Freedom Forum, the First Amendment and the Civil Rights Movement. I'm Thomas Raines, Executive Director of the Judge Frank Johnson Institute, and I am speaking to you from the Frank Johnson Courthouse in Montgomery, Alabama. It was here in this building that many of the cases discussed in this new course took place. As the course introduction states, it was designed for use by higher education faculty, students, working professionals, and others who wish to explore more fully the intersection between the movement and the First Amendment. The course incorporates multimedia resources from the museum and written and documentary film materials produced by Stetson University. The Johnson Institute is proud to partner with the Freedom Forum to share this course, and I am honored to have the opportunity to speak with the two authors, Professor Robert Bickel and Mr. Gene Policinski. Robert Bickel is Professor Emeritus, Stetson University. Professor Bickel's interest in the Civil Rights Movement began in college in 1960 and included the involvement of students in protest against the racial segregation of higher education and the summary retaliation against students for their participation in civil rights movement activities. Professor Bickel earned his JD degree with highest honors from Florida State University in 1968, and then entered the United States Justice Department's honors program. He has practiced and taught for more than 35 years, and has focused the past 10 years of his scholarship endeavors on the subject of constitutional law and civil rights history, the First Amendment, and a travel course that takes students to historic sites of the civil rights movement. He has been elected to membership of the American Law Institute and has received the American Bar Association's National Award for Innovative Continuing Education. Mr. Gene Policinski is a senior fellow for the First Amendment for the Freedom Forum, where he contributes to the weekly First Five commentary on First Amendment issues, responds to news media inquiries, and participates in Freedom Forum programs. One of the founding editors of USA Today, he is also a trustee of the First Amendment Museum being developed in Augusta, Maine. A longtime proponent of diversity as an essential element of a free press, he is a member of the board of directors of Journalism's, a regular report on diversity in the news media. Gene writes and lectures and is interviewed regularly on news media and First Amendment issues. He is a contributor to Whistleblowers, Leaks, and the First Amendment, published by the American Bar Association, providing a chapter on First Amendment issues and a free press, and has been published in a number of law review journals. He is the co-author with Professor Bickel of this course, The First Amendment and the Civil Rights Movement. Bob and Gene, thank you both so much for joining me and for your work creating this exciting course. We're so glad to have you with us. Bob, I'd like to start with you for the first question. What motivated the idea for this new multimedia online course, the First Amendment and the Civil Rights Movement?
When we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Brown v. Board, I reflected on the fact that the years of the Civil Rights Movement, from 1955 to 1968, were my years in high school, college, and law school. The movement had been transformative for me and shaped the rest of my life, professionally and personally. How we succeeded in passing America's two greatest human rights laws is a history that bridged all social science thought, but had already begun to fade after more than half a century. If we were going to celebrate Brown's 50th anniversary, we needed to reimagine it as guiding the civic and legal activism for every human rights challenge our society faces today and in the future.
Thank you. Bob, why did you believe that education aimed at a basic understanding of the civil rights movement from 1955 to 65 was the essential bridge to current and future civil rights initiatives?
Every major scholar of education and the future of society, from Alfred North Whitehead to Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. to John Dewey, had told us that the usefulness of a knowledge and understanding of the past is to equip us for the present. The life of the law and the ongoing social initiatives must be shaped by our experience as a people And in this project, we had the opportunity to tell this story firsthand by writing an efficient account of the history matched with the firsthand personal accounts of still living movement veterans who are now in their 70s and 80s.
Thank you. This next question is for both of you. How did your unique collaboration between Stetson University and the Freedom Forum come about? Bob, would you like to answer first?
We felt the need to emphasize, as we felt many had not done, the essential understanding that the movement would not have succeeded without the First Amendment's freedoms of speech, association, press, and the right of citizens to petition their government for a redress of the flaws in our promise of democracy. These protections were and are at the core of every individual voice and every peaceful mass demonstration that has moved our government to respond to its failures and strive to advance civil rights for all citizens. This synergy between the First Amendment's freedoms and the substantive rights conferred by the 14th and 15th Amendments was the sole reason for the movement's success, and thus became the unique goal of our collaboration to create this online course.
I would just follow up on Bob's remarks by saying that the course really is a direct outgrowth of the Stetson program to bring students each summer to various important locations in the modern civil rights movement, including Nashville, where the Freedom Forum's First Amendment Center is located, founded by John Siegenthaler. John and I would speak each summer to the visiting students who were led by Bob and his colleagues. And after John died in 2014, Bob and I decided that the sessions would continue, and that with his videos and his scholarship throughout his career, that we could create a course to bring that experience to others. Would honor John's personal civil rights legacy, and we would sketch out for future generations the power of the First Amendment really to fuel change in this nation. We wanted to take that experience that we had in the classroom in Nashville and bring it to others over a longer period of time.
That is wonderful. Thank you. Bob, how does this First Amendment history and the understanding of the civil rights movement shape our present and future civic initiatives and our political leadership?
As our course page explains, in 1968, the Kerner Commission told us that the movement's success would not be followed immediately by a resolution of our challenges, that we still remain divided on many fundamental issues of equality as a people. But the Commission reminded us that choice was possible. The movement had proven that to be true. Our principal task was therefore to define that choice and to press for unbiased opportunities for all people within a single society. The result, the Commission wrote, must be new attitudes, new understanding, and above all, a new will. Jean and I believe that through this online course, we could present a use of movement history to provide a guide for current and future civil rights initiatives, and through online access, reach and connect thousands of students and faculty in higher education, along with a guide for any and all civil rights initiatives in which we are now engaged, and for which we must still create new approaches. This course builds that bridge between movement history and these ongoing efforts.
Thank you. Bob, why is it so important to connect this aspect of constitutional jurisprudence with real life experiences of the people of the Direct Action Campaign for Civil Rights?
Dr. Jack Bass is a former Nieman Fellow at Harvard, having studied constitutional law there. As a newspaper reporter and editor by trade, he was twice named South Carolina Journalist of the Year. The important factor for us is that Dr. Bass knew and interviewed the 7 federal judges whose judicial decisions implemented Brown's mandate. In his early book, Unlikely Heroes, he brilliantly connects their seminal judicial decisions with the direct action campaign for civil rights led by Dr. King. My students have praised his book and how effectively it explains this synergy that I spoke of earlier between the events that were at the heart of the movement and the law that was shaped by the movement. It was our goal to make this connection uniquely experiential through first-hand stories from our selected interview subjects. We wanted to emphasize that it was this synergy that pushed the courts, the executive branch, and Congress to make the equal protections of law a reality.
One of those 7 judges, of course, being Judge Frank Johnson, whom this organization is named after. And we'll talk a bit more about him in a minute. Gene, what does the course tell us about the First Amendment in the context of the Civil Rights Movement and about its ultimate role in our democracy?
Well, I think the course, at its most basic, demonstrates that the modern civil rights movement is the greatest example in our nation's history of the use of all 5 freedoms, that is, religion, speech, press, assembly, and petition, by those who would change a nation, to touch their conscience, which I believe is actually, as the founders intended, a dynamic tool, even though it's only 45 words, to produce needed change that those founders either could not or in some cases would not foresee. You know, I should add that while it's not overtly stated in the course, it also shows the absolute need for and the benefit of an independent judiciary, which is concerned and focused on justice, empowered by the First Amendment and the rest of the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, and dedicated to the rule of law. So it's not subject to the popular sentiment of the moment or longstanding prejudices, frankly, that can infect and direct or even influence the legislative and executive branches of government.
Thank you. Bob, why do you and the Freedom Forum see this course as emphasizing Judge Frank Johnson's legacy?
I mentioned Unlikely Heroes, of course, but Professor Bass is famously known for his biography of Judge Johnson, his great book called Taming the Storm, for which he received the Kennedy Book Award in 1994. As Dr. Bass writes in Unlikely Heroes, Judge Johnson, from his first opinion, which implemented Brown versus Board, the Montgomery bus boycott decision, was at the center of the trailblazing direction the federal Fifth Circuit would follow in the seminal civil rights cases. Our online course connects Judge Johnson's leadership with Chief Justice Marshall's imperative observation in 1819 in McCullough versus Maryland that it must never be forgotten that our Constitution is intended to endure for ages to come, and consequently to be adapted to the various crises in human affairs. Through this course, we also reveal Judge Johnson's knowledge, his personal observation of the movement, and his understanding of the social and political inequality that had existed in spite of the 14th and 15th Amendments in the half century before Brown, and the need to apply the law in accord with this dynamic Constitution.
Bob, that is great. And you give much emphasis to Judge Johnson's First Amendment jurisprudence. Is that an especially important part of your goals in creating this course?
Absolutely. His decision in Williams versus Wallace is, in my opinion, one of the most important First Amendment opinions ever written. In Williams, he moves voting rights, still one of the most pressing issues of our time, to center stage as the fundamental basis of our democracy. Addressing the attempts by Southern white supremacy to deny the vote to Black citizens, he reaffirms the First Amendment's petition clause, writing that our demand for the redress of grievances should be in proportion to the wrongs we are petitioning against. And his approval of the Selma to Montgomery Voting Rights March is one of the most important applications of the First Amendment's protection of peaceful mass demonstrations for civil rights ever. This is perhaps then and now why Dr. King, the Department of Justice, and the federal courts made voting rights the capstone issue of the movement, and why we feature voting rights as the final chapter of our course.
And sticking with you, Bob, where do you believe Judge Johnson's constitutional jurisprudence became the path to where we are now, and how will it shape our future?
Judge Johnson's understanding of the historical, moral, and cultural basis of the First Amendment, the Civil Rights Amendments, and the federal laws, all related to civil rights, and were immediately advanced by his brilliant successor, Judge Myron Thompson. That was the immediate effect. Judge Thompson was appointed in 1980 to fill Judge Johnson's seat in the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Alabama. Not only did Judge Thompson assume Judge Johnson's cases, however, he advanced civil rights jurisprudence for more than 3 decades himself. Each year, Judge Thompson hosted my students in Judge Johnson's original courtroom as a part of my civil rights travel course. He shared with them Judge Johnson's role in that trailblazing direction of civil rights law in the 1950s and 60s, and then a discussion of his own cases, which have shaped a new era of civil rights, and his belief, as Gene has referred to, in the importance of an independent federal judiciary. Judge Thompson and other federal judges have written and will write the next chapter in the civil rights jurisprudence that will respond to the new issues, new initiatives, and a new resolve to make equal justice for all the fundamental principles in our courts and in our society.
Thank you both for taking the time to speak with me today about the Freedom Forum's new multimedia course, the First Amendment and the Civil Rights Movement. That's about all the time we have, but before we close, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
Forgetting our history is to not understand why and how we arrived at where we are now in the struggle for civil rights. So we cannot forget that history. But that history must be useful to our present and future efforts. That is what Whitehead and Holmes and Dewey and John Siegenthaler were trying to tell us. We must understand why the most pressing social quandary in our history as a society led us to decide a case called Brown versus Board of Education. And then how we succeed in enacting America's 2 greatest civil rights laws in 1964 and 1965. The experiences of the people of that campaign for civil rights and the judicial decisions that applied the Constitution to advance civil rights must then be connected in a way that reveals why and how we define our ongoing struggle for civil rights. and how we can prevail in our efforts to achieve equal justice and equal opportunity. That is the reason for this course, to teach why and how we will meet that challenge.
Gene?
Well, I have to say that for John Siegenthaler and myself, those visits by the students to our center in Nashville were transformative in some ways. I think it let us both realize that by bringing alive those moments and those important circumstances during the civil rights movement through examples and through the firsthand knowledge John had, and by reviewing the law, we saw the change in those students, the hope, the optimism that they could also make this a better nation. This course offered us an opportunity to do that by bringing in Bob's scholarship, a little bit of contribution from myself, but also the videos of the people who lived the experience, put in context with the museum's front pages from that era so that we get a sense, convey a sense of what was going on in the country and how it was perceived. All of that will, I think, keep the power and the impact and the lessons of the civil rights movement alive, and an awareness of how the First Amendment fuels change over and over again in our country's history. So if we've done that with this course, I think we will have succeeded.
It has been an honor to speak with each of you today, and the Johnson Institute is proud to work in partnership with the Freedom Forum for this multimedia course, the First Amendment and the Civil Rights Movement. I'm glad we could do this short introductory interview, and for those watching, you can view the course on the Freedom Forum Institute's website at freedomforuminstitute.org or access it via the Judge Johnson Institute's website at thejohnsoninstitute.org. Thank you.